Okay, so thank you for listening or being here, whoever is here, and to those who listen to it later on. I'm going to continue reading in Sri Bhaktyaloka. This section is called Laulya, ardent longing or greed. We've read through Janasanga, we've read through, which is bad association, or mundane association, Niyamagraha, falsely following rules and regulations or rejecting rules and regulations, Prajalpa, unnecessary talking, and we've read through Prayasa, over endeavoring, and Atyahara, which is over collecting. I can turn that down a little bit. Yep, and if people have any comments or questions, whatever, of course you can always post them in the chat. Or we're going to have a discussion afterwards on Discord. So if you want to join us there, send me a message on Facebook or in the chat, the Google chat. We can get you connected. So, gonna read from Laulya. Ardent longing or greed. Okay, the meaning of the word Laulya is restlessness, greed, and desire. Restlessness is of two kinds: restlessness of the mind and restlessness of intelligence. The chitta, or mind, has the propensity for following the dictates of the senses. When the mind follows the dictates of the senses and becomes absorbed in a particular subject, attachment or aversion arise. Therefore, restlessness of the mind is of two types: restlessness due to attachment, and restlessness due to aversion. In Bhagavad Gita 2:67 it is said, Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano nu vidiyate tad asya harati pragyam vayurnavam ivam basi. Quote, as a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Unquote. Again in Bhagavad Gita 3:34 it is said, quote, there are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Unquote. In order to regulate Laulya, in the form of restlessness of the mind, one has to take shelter of Goddess Bhakti Devi. The instruction of Bhakti Devi is this: when the cause of the mind's restlessness is sense gratification, and this restlessness is the main obstacle in the practice of devotional service, then all sensual activities should be dovetailed in the service of the Lord, and the attachment to sense gratification should be transformed into attachment for the Lord. Then the mind becomes fixed in devotional service by taking shelter of that attachment. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the sense of touch are called knowledge-acquiring senses. Sorry. The hands, the legs, the anus, and so on are the working senses. When the objects of all these senses are associated in a devotional mood, then the mind becomes fixed on the Lord. Taste, form, smell, touch, and sound, these are the objects of the senses. One has to arouse a mood of devotion in all these objects and enjoy them. Then devotional service is cultivated. Among the objects of the senses, aversion should be applied on any that are unfavorable for devotional service, and attachment should be applied on any that are favorable for devotional service. But until the restlessness of the intelligence is vanquished, how will the restlessness of the mind be checked? When the restlessness of the intelligence is vanquished, the mind can regulate attachment and aversion for sense objects by strength of the intelligence. The intelligence is that which discriminates between the mind's good and bad propensities. That intelligence is of two types, resolute and many-branched. There is one type of resolute intelligence, and there are unlimited types of many-branched intelligence, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:41. Quote, "Those who are on the spiritual path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched." Unquote. Disturbances such as lust, desire to attain the heavenly planets, increasing activities that produce enjoyment and opulence, and rejecting the spiritual world, all arise from the many-branched intelligence of irresolute persons. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita 2:44, it is said, Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parita chetasam vyavaya satmika buddhi samadau na vidyate. In the mind of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Unquote. Those whose intelligence is fixed in samadhi are transcendentally situated and have steady minds. Their symptoms are given in Bhagavad Gita 2:55 and 56 as follows. Quote, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind thus purified finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady mind." Unquote. These two verses from the Bhagavad Gita clarify the process of tolerating the urges of speech, mind, and anger, as recommended in the first verse of Upadeshamrta. Now it should be known that there are two types of intelligence. The propensity to discriminate between good and bad under the dictation of the mind is called mundane intelligence, and the intelligence to discriminate between good and bad under the dictation of the soul is called spiritual intelligence. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita 3:42 it is said, quote, "The working senses are superior to dull matter, and mind is higher than the senses. Because the senses work under the dictation of the mind's propensities, intelligence is still higher than the mind, for the intelligence is the propensity of the soul, and therefore the master of the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence." Unquote. The intelligence also pervertedly accepts materialism only when under the control of the false ego. When under the control of pure ego, in the form of identifying oneself as the servant of Krishna, the intelligence is naturally pure. Therefore, the Vedas establish that the knower of the body is intelligent. The spirit soul is higher than the intelligence. Because it is only the soul's propensity. When a living entity realizes himself as a pure spiritual particle, then his spiritual ego, in the form of identifying himself as the servant of Krishna, naturally arises. At that time, the intelligence in its pure form rejects materialism and accepts spiritualism. At that time, a living entity has no desire other than the service of Krishna, and he rejects material desires as insignificant. In this position, the living entity is known as Sthita Prajna, transcendentally situated, or Sthitadhi, steady-minded. Being empowered by spiritual potency, the intelligence then becomes steady and controls the mind and heart by regulating them. Then the mind, under the direction of the intelligence, controls the senses by regulating them, and a favorable mood for devotional service manifests in the sense objects, indriyasya arte. This is called indriya nigraha, controlling the senses in devotional service. Whatever arrangements are there for controlling the senses in the paths of dry knowledge and renunciation does not properly control the senses. In Bhagavad Gita 259 it is said, quote, "The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But seeing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness." Unquote. This is real sense control. One should spiritualize the senses and control them with the mind, and one should spiritualize the mind and control it with the intelligence. By this process, Laulya, in the form of restlessness of the intelligence and mind, is vanquished. When the intelligence is restless, the mind cannot be fixed. The restless intelligence wanders, sometimes in karma, sometimes in yoga, and sometimes in dry renunciation, and sometimes in dry knowledge. To fix the intelligence in bhakti by giving up restlessness, the Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20, 32-34 prescribes, quote, "Everything that can be achieved by fruitive activities, penance, knowledge, detachment, mystic yoga, charity, religious duties, and all other means of perfecting life is easily achieved by my devotee through loving service unto me. If somehow or other my devotee desires promotion to heaven, liberation, or residence in my abode, he easily achieves such benedictions. Because my devotee possesses saintly behavior and deep intelligence, they completely dedicate themselves to me, and do not desire anything beside me. Indeed, even if I offer them liberation from birth and death, they do not accept it. The devotee naturally enjoys the pleasure of my service." Unquote. Considering all this, the practicing devotee should give up Laulya in the form of restlessness and attain fixed intelligence in devotional service. Another meaning of the word Laulya is greed. If greed is directed to other objects, then how can it be applied in relation to Krishna? Greed should be carefully engaged in the service of Krishna. Greed for material enjoyment should be conquered by the above-mentioned method. That is why it is said that persons who are overcome by lust and greed cannot become as pure through the process of yoga, beginning with yama, as they can by serving Krishna. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, quote, "It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system one can get relief from the disturbances of lust and greed, but this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul, for this satisfaction is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead." Unquote. Because shamoman nishtata buddhe, quote, "absorbing the intelligence in me constitutes mental equilibrium." Unquote. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:19-36. By developing greed for Krishna's service, the Vaishnava's service, and chanting the holy names, there will be no greed for inferior things. One who becomes greedy by seeing the Vrajavasi's service to Krishna is very fortunate. By the mercy of that greed, he attains the qualification for raga bhakti. One's material greed is vanquished in proportion to the development of greed for ragatmika service. If one has greed for nice foodstuffs, drinks, sleeping, smoking, and drinking wine, then one's devotion diminishes. Greed for wine, wealth, and women is most contrary to devotional principles. Those who have a desire for attaining pure devotional service should carefully give up such things. Whether for auspicious things or sinful things, greed for anything not related to Krishna is most despicable. Greed only in relation to Krishna is the cause of all auspiciousness. The greed attained by the Mahajans for topics of Krishna is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.19 as follows, quote, "We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment." Unquote. Another name for greed in relation to Krishna is adara, or respect. We will discuss this in detail later. Another meaning of Laulya is desire. Desires are of two types: desire for material enjoyment and desire for liberation. Unless one gives up these two types of desires, one cannot practice devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami has written in Bhakti-yoga Sindhu 1.2.15, quote, "The material desire to enjoy the material world and the desire to become liberated from material bondage are considered to be two witches, and they hunt one like ghosts. As long as these witches remain within the heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these two witches remain in the heart, there is no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service." Unquote. There are two types of material enjoyments: worldly and heavenly. Wealth, women, children, opulences, kingdom, victory, good food, good sleep, associating with women for sense enjoyment, good birth, and other pleasures are all worldly enjoyments. Going to heaven and drinking nectar there, as well as sense gratification, free of old age, are all heavenly enjoyments. When the heart is filled with the desire to enjoy, one cannot selflessly worship Krishna. Therefore, unless the desire for enjoyment is completely uprooted from the heart, one's progress in devotional service will be obstructed. In this regard, there's one thing to be said. If all these material enjoyments are favorable to devotional service, then householders can accept them without sin. In that case, all these enjoyments are not called enjoyments, but rather they are means of progress in a devotee's life. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.9-10 has stated, quote, "All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. Since a human being is meant to inquire about the absolute truth, nothing else should be the goal of one's works." Unquote. Another name of dharma, or occupational service, is yukta vairagya. Desire for liberation must be rejected. There are 5 types of liberation, namely Laulya, living on the same planet, Sarshti, having the same opulence, Samipya, to be a personal associate, Sarupya, having the same bodily features, and Sayuja, oneness. Sayuja, liberation in the form of merging with the Lord, is hated by practitioners of devotional service. Although Laulya, Sarshti, Samipya, and Sarupya are devoid of the desire for enjoyment, still they are undesirable. As soon as a living entity becomes free from material bondage by the strength of devotional service, he immediately attains liberation. That liberation, however, is not the principal fruit of bhakti. The pure love for Krishna, attained by liberated souls, is the principal fruit of sadhana bhakti. In this regard, the statement of Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is appropriate, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 6.267-269. Quote, "If there is a chance to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a pure devotee sometimes accepts the Laulya, Sarupya, Samipya, or Sarshti forms of liberation, but never Sayuja. A pure devotee does not like even to hear about Sayuja Mukti, which inspires him with fear and hatred. Indeed, the pure devotee would rather go to hell than merge into the effulgence of the Lord. There are 2 kinds of Sayuja Mukti: merging into the Brahman effulgence by merging into the personal body of the Lord. Merging into the Lord's body is even more abominable than merging into his effulgence." Well, unquote. The purport is that the liberation of a devotee in the form of freedom from bondage is easily attained by the will of Krishna. That is why one should not pollute his endeavor for devotional service with desires. It is the essential duty of the practicing devotee to carefully give up materialistic Laulya and develop spiritual Laulya. So restless intelligence means coming up with different paradigms, basically, because intelligence is the decision of what is good and what is bad. And when we're coming up with new types of good and bad, that means we're following the mind, because the mind is always accepting and rejecting things. And those acceptances and rejections are always going to be relative. So in the summer, water is nice. In the winter, water is just normal water is cold, and so to take a bath in it is not nice. In the summer, to take a bath in cold water is nice. So like that, because of the relative perception that the mind has. Sometimes one type of thing will be good if it's good for the sense gratification, and another time it will be bad for the sense gratification, and the intelligence based off of that will always be restless intelligence. So that's intelligence based off of false ego. If one takes it for granted, or takes what the spiritual master says and what's in the Vedas as truth, and they use that as their paradigm to view the world, to interact with the world, to make their decisions about what is right and what is wrong, if they try to do that, then they'll have steady intelligence, because that's all based off of Krishna, understanding who is Krishna and what will bring one to Krishna consciousness. This transcendental intelligence comes from Krishna. So that's how you get steady intelligence. And then from that, you can regulate the mind, and the mind then can regulate the senses. So that's basic explanation of what he was talking about before. Okay, so continue to read here. The next section is now beginning. 6 qualities that enhance bhakti, and this is the majority of the book. And we'll probably get through the first. We'll read utsaha, which is enthusiasm, and then nishchaya is confidence, which is actually the longest section, I believe. So we'll just do utsaha, and then if people want to share their realizations and share their thoughts on what we read, we'd all like to hear it. We're going to get on Discord and discuss. And if you want to know what Discord is, send me a message and we can try to get you on. It's a pretty easy program to participate in. You just need a mic and headphones. Okay, so 6 qualities that enhance bhakti: utsaha, enthusiasm. In his Sri Upadeshamrta, Srila Rupa Goswami has described Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, Janasanga, and Laulya as detrimental to devotional service. We have already separately described these 6 items. Now, in the 3rd shloka, he mentions the 6 items favorable for devotional service. Utsaha nishchaya dharya tatat karma pravartanat sangatya gatsato vritte shadbhir bhaktir prasiddhyati. Quote, there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. 1. Utsaha, being enthusiastic. 2. Nishchaya, endeavoring with confidence. 3. Dharya, being patient. 4. Tat karma pravartana, acting according to the regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnaho, Smarnam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. 5. Sanga Tyaga, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And 6. Satovrittehe, or sadhuvritti, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. Well, unquote. Now we should discuss these 6 items separately. Therefore, first I am speaking about the conclusions regarding utsaha. Without utsaha, one becomes negligent in his worship. Negligence is born out of inactivity, apathy, or indifference. Laziness and inertia are called inactivity. When utsaha is generated, laziness and inertia cannot remain. The absence of desire to work is inertia. This inertia is opposite to the nature of spirit. If one allows this inertia to remain in his body or heart, then how can he perform devotional service? The state of apathy develops from carelessness. One should practice devotional service without deviation. This is instructed in the Bhagavad Gita 6.23 in the following words. Quote, This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith, and not be deviated from the path. Unquote. In his commentary on this verse, Srila Bhaktivinoda Mahashaya has said, Atmanya yogyatva mananam nirvedas tad rahitena chetasa. Quote, one becomes indifferent to whatever work he feels unqualified for. Unquote. Devotional service should be performed in this mentality. Regarding Bhakti-yoga, it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.27 and 8, quote, among these 3 paths, Jnana Yoga, the path of philosophical speculation, is recommended for those who are disgusted with material life and thus detached from ordinary fruitive activities. Those who are not disgusted with material life, having many desires yet to fulfill, should seek perfection through the path of Karma Yoga. If somehow or other by good fortune one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither very disgusted with nor attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of Bhakti-yoga. Unquote. The purport is this. For those who have attained indifference to material activities, but have not yet realized spiritual activities, what can remain in their hearts besides indifference? For them, undifferentiated Brahma-jnana is the topmost achievement. For those who have not attained indifference for material activities due to lack of spiritual realization, there is no way to cleanse the heart other than Karma Yoga. Those who have realized spiritual activities and understood that material activities are insignificant attain indifference for all material activities. They accept some material activities as a support for their spiritual awakening, but they have no attachment for such activities. In proportion to the degree that they discuss spiritual topics and devotion, freedom from material association is awakened as an extraneous fruit. The symptoms of a devotee are given in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20-27 through 28 as follows. Quote, having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. Unquote. Karma arises from lust, jnana arises from indifference, and bhakti arises from faith in the Supreme Lord. The person who has attained faith is naturally disgusted with material activities. He accepts without attachment only those activities that are favorable for increasing his faith in the Lord. Without the material body, one cannot cultivate devotional service, so there is no benefit if one renounces the activities that are needed to maintain the physical body, thinking them to be the source of misery and lust. The fruits of those activities which are the source of misery for others are therefore enjoyed by the devotees, who condemn them as insignificant. They worship Krishna with devotion and firm faith, while enjoying the fruits of their work as they fulfill the necessities of life. Those who enjoy the results of material activities with ardent affection are called attached. Those who neglect the results of karma but accept only what is favorable to devotional service are called unattached. Although they are unattached to material activities, they work enthusiastically in devotional life. The process of advancement for the practitioner of devotional service is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 20, Text 29 through 30, and Text 35, as follows. When an intelligent person engages constantly in worshipping me through loving devotional service, as described by me, his heart becomes firmly situated in me. Thus all material desires within the heart are destroyed. The knot in the heart is pierced, all misgivings are cut to pieces, and the chain of fruitive actions is terminated when I am seen as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that complete detachment is the highest stage of freedom. Therefore, one who has no personal desire and does not pursue personal rewards can achieve loving devotional service unto me. Unquote. The purport is this: It is useless trying independently to destroy ignorance and lust in the heart. But ignorance, lust, fruitive activities, all doubts, and material bondage are destroyed by the mercy of the Lord in the course of cultivating devotional service. The endeavor of karmis and jnanis does not yield such results. Therefore, when one becomes neutral by giving up other desires and hopes, he attains pure devotional service to Krishna. That's why it takes faith. One has to believe that Krishna will purify them, and that what they're after, getting rid of your doubts, getting rid of your lust or your greed or your material bondage, it's all destroyed by the mercy of Krishna. So that's why practicing devotional service requires faith, where jnana doesn't require faith. It just requires detachment from material activities, or I guess being disgusted with them. We should not lose enthusiasm because we have no strength to destroy the reactions of karma. In the very beginning of devotional service, the sadhaka must have faith with full enthusiasm. One pure Vaishnava Acharya has written that the process of bhajana kriya, devotional practice, is of two types: nishtita, fixed, and anishtita, flickering. With faith, one should learn devotional service under the merciful direction of a sadhu, and when he attains the stage of firm faith, he engages in nishtita, fixed devotional service. Until he attains this fixed devotional service, his service remains flickering. In this stage of devotional service, there are 6 symptoms: utsahamai, false confidence; tarala, sporadic endeavor; vyuda vikalpa, indecision; vishaya sangara, struggle with the senses; niyamakshama, inability to uphold vows; and charangaragini, enjoying the facilities offered by bhakti. Boy, that sounds familiar. That's straight from Madhurya Kadambini, the book we read in our book club. So continuing, in Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas, carelessness is counted among the offenses against the holy name. In that scripture, the word pramada is described as inattentiveness. Sri Hari Nama Chintamani has further divided this inattentiveness in 3 ways. Apathy, inactivity, and distraction are the 3 types of inattentiveness. Until one gets free from these 3 types of inattentiveness, one cannot perform pure devotional service at all. Even if one gives up all other namaparadas, if he is still inattentive, he can never have attraction for the holy name. If one has enthusiasm in the beginning of devotional service, and that enthusiasm does not become cold, then one will never become apathetic, lazy, or distracted in chanting the holy names. Therefore, enthusiasm is the only support for all types of devotional service. By enthusiastically performing devotional service, one can give up anishtita service in a very short time, and thus attain anishtha. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami has said, Adau shraddha tata sadhu-sanga dasa bhajana kriya, tato narta nivritti syat tato nishta ruchistata. By awakening of faith, one becomes eligible for devotional service. When this eligibility is attained, one achieves the association of devotees. By the association of devotees, one is engaged in the execution of devotional service. In the beginning, there is no nishta, or firm faith, in that service, because various types of anarthas keep crushing the heart. All anarthas are vanquished, however, by performing devotional service with enthusiasm. The more anarthas are vanquished, the more nishtha is awakened. The word shraddha is certainly faith, but enthusiasm is the life of shraddha. Faith without enthusiasm is meaningless. I guess that's like Jesus saying faith without works is meaningless, because you won't do any work if you don't have any faith. The essence of work is faith, and that's what he said before. Many people think that they have faith in God, but because they have no enthusiasm, their faith has no meaning. Therefore, due to lack of sadhu-sanga, they do not perform devotional service. And that's it. We'll stop there. Next week, Monday, we'll pick this up again. Nishchaya, confidence. Confidence, interestingly enough, he starts to talk about the spiritual master and scripture. And this kind of gets back to Laulya and your intelligence being fixed. If you have faith in what is said in the scripture, if you have confidence in it, then your intelligence will be based off of what is said, what is transcendentally said. Because you can't speculate to understand transcendence, you have to get knowledge from the spiritual master in scripture. So confidence, or in another way, faith, is essential. And so he really breaks it down. Why confidence is essential, and it comes down to philosophy, is what he talks about here. You could also say confidence that Krishna will reciprocate with you, or that Krishna will purify your consciousness. It's another way of saying faith, I guess. That is also applicable. That if you have faith that Krishna is going to elevate you, and that being elevated is going to be what's best for your existence, that's confidence, that's faith, and that's just essential for bhakti. So yeah, I hope we see you, whoever's here, we hope to see you guys then, and we'll continue reading this, and I'll also probably do some random streaming of reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam at some point. If you're interested in sharing your realizations, join us on Discord, or if you're watching this after the live stream, add a comment in the comment section below. And we'll see you next time. Wednesdays and Mondays at 6:30 is what we're going to do. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.